What's up, guys? Welcome to episode number 25 of the KFO show, Kayak Fishing Obsessed. If you love kayak fishing, fishing in general, you're going to love tonight's show, guys. I got Ric Burnley from Kayak Angler magazine. And I figured we can't have a kayak fishing obsessed show without Kayak Angler mag. So he is in the green room right now. I'm really excited about the history. He's been doing this a very, very long time, probably before any of us have been doing it. But before we bring him on the show, got some things, got some updates, some news. As you guys can see, some of you in the podcast can't. By the way, podcast is killing it, like 500 views an episode. So if you're on the podcast, thank you guys so much for showing up, listening in. But I want to give a shout out to my sponsor of the show, usrivermaps.com. Jeff's a good friend of mine. He's also a listener, and he makes some sweet hydrological maps. So if you're into that kind of thing, usually I have one over my shoulder right now, but right now I don't. So I am actually going to show you. Here's a photo, as you guys can see, it's Wisconsin in there. And man, these things are awesome. I have a couple of my home. A lot of my friends around the country, I see these are popping up in their houses. So if you want and interested in one of these, there's a little code for you right there. Get 35 off. For those on the podcast, all lowercase, GET, $, the number 35, OFF, and you can check him out. And just he started this whenever I started the show, probably, I don't know, 25, 27 weeks ago. And so he's just now getting this bad boy off the ground. Also tonight, we have the Cask Cray giveaway. If any one of you become a channel member tonight, or anytime between now and the next show, I will send you a $10 gift card to caskcray.com. Thanks to my buddy Rick over there at Cask Cray. So I was actually out today with Cincy fishing dudes, and we were slamming some smallmouth on the nubs, which is the Ned rig baits. So those things are freaking awesome. All right, guys, I am pumped about this. The Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series is 5 days away. I've been talking about this for weeks. And I was just checking out over at Fishing Chaos, and there's already 285 anglers signed up for this across all the anchor teams. Already we're creeping up on 2,000 fish posted, and so this is pretty awesome. And so if you're not part of this, don't know what it is. I am doing 4 1-month tournaments, May, June, July, and August. You win one of those 1-month tournaments, you win a spot on my team, and I'm going to anchor a team. We're all going to go down on Veterans Day weekend to Lake Gunnersville, and we're going to fish off against Team Chad Hoover, Team Alex Rudd, Team Fluke Master, Team Creek Fishing Adventures, Team, there's so many. The aggressively average anglers are popping on here. Larry Melton Jr. I mean, this thing is blowing up really fast, and it's a lot of fun. And I was just checking out like the roster. Guys, our Team Wendell has 26 people signed up for May. Team Chad Hoover and Team Fluke Master have the same number. And so, guys, we're bringing the heat. So thank you so much. Let me know in the comments if you are signed up for the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series tournament. Let me know in the comments below. I'm gonna see who's all in that. So that'd be pretty awesome. I'm throwing up some gift cards. So if you sign up, let's say you catch one bass the entire month because you can't get out there. I have 4 $100 Cask Cray gift cards I'm gonna be giving away. So I'll be giving one of the 26 who are signed up right now. We'll win that. So I'll do the giveaway on the live show sometime moving forward. All right. So I am pretty pumped about all that stuff. But remember, this is an interactive show, so we want your questions. But I want to introduce Ric. Welcome to the show, guys. If you don't know this, 334 articles on Kayak Angler magazine, and he has been. When we were all thinking or potentially thinking about getting in a fishing kayak, or maybe not even thinking about it, Ric was writing books on it back in like 2007. He was like pioneering the sport. And so, Ric, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good for a historical figure, I guess.
That's not ancient.
You make me sound like I should be like on Mount Rushmore or something.
Oh my goodness. Well, I appreciate those who, the shoulders on which we stand upon. So, I mean, someone's got to pioneer it. And I mean, there's few people I know that I have access to that have done that. And so thank you for all you've given to kayak fishing. And so tell us a little bit about yourself. It's kind of everyone on the show kind of know who we're talking to. What have you been involved in professionally? Because you've been in the sport of fishing for a while.
Yeah. Editor of Kayak Angler magazine, and as you mentioned, I wrote the book, The Complete Kayak uh, Fisherman, and so long ago I forget what it was called, but yeah, back in 2000s, early 2000s. But I've been fishing since I was 2 years old. My dad was a charter boat guide and also editor of a magazine. So while everybody else's dad was getting up and going to work, my dad was getting up and going fishing, and so I pretty quickly figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up. Although I also I'm a high school English teacher still, so I've got almost 25 years in the classroom. This morning I was teaching ninth grade knuckleheads, and then in the afternoon I was out fishing for a red drum. So and now I'm doing the show with you.
Yeah,
So yeah, I came into it as a fisherman from early on, and boat fisherman and surf fisherman, and then when kayaks started popping up, I knew I had to get in on that too. It's just a way to fish all the time. That's all it mattered. To me, it was just as long as I could get out and wet line, I was happy. So it was just another avenue. Um, and At the same time, I started working some for. I graduated from college and started working some for my dad, writing a few articles. They were terrible because he was running a magazine called the Fisherman Magazine, and one thing led to another, and I ended up becoming a regional editor for Salt Water Sportsman magazine. And then one thing led to another, and I got offered the opportunity to be editor of Kayak Angler magazine, and now that's coming over 10, 12 years ago. And so I've been doing that for 10 or 12 years, but I still freelance for Saltwater Sportsman, Sport Fishing, Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, all the other magazines. Anybody who's looking for content and got some money to pay. So
right.
I work for all those guys still too, and stay pretty busy, and manage to fish 2 or 3 nights a week or days a week or whenever I can get a chance.
Hey, some people would
So
call that living the dream right there. 2 to 3 times a week. Oh yeah.
yeah, I live in Virginia Beach, so we have great access to fishing. Almost year round, pretty much year round. Well, you really say year round. I started taking a break this winter. I just took a break for a couple months, did some mountain biking and carrying on, and just kind of stepped away from it for a few months. But you can fish all year long here, and it's real easy access. We do a lot of saltwater fishing, and inshore, offshore, and again, surf fishing, kayak fishing, boat fishing, whatever it takes to get out there. Um, as long as I'm getting on the water, I'm stoked. So that's
Nice.
what it's all about. But
So
yeah,
if you no, go ahead.
mhm.
No, the question I was going to ask you was, I think you're uniquely positioned to kind of share with everyone, from your point of view, the evolution of kayak fishing, from kind of where you sat, because it sounded like you're like, okay, I used to boat fish, and then kayak fishing kind of came online. When was that? What has it looked like from kind of your chair, writing about it all the time, over the years?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, like I said, about 2000, my parents moved out of town. I was just out of college, just married, and there goes my boat. 'Cause I was fishing with my dad all the time. So I was like, ugh. So of course I did a lot of surf fishing, and we fished the surf hard, and wade fishing and everything else. But I first saw people, when the first Hobie Outback Hank Parker popped up. I contacted Hobie, and they sent me one, and I think I just tore it to pieces in less than 6 months. But started covering that, writing about that for the magazine my dad was working for, and Fisherman Magazine it was called, and uh, got out of that boat and ended up getting a Ocean Kayak Prowler 15, and that was it. After that, we were unstoppable. I started hanging out with a guy, kayak Kevin Whitley. He's kind of a well-known angler in this area, And we just started checking boxes off the list. Big striped bass, check. Big red drum, check. Tall togs, sheeps, whatever. Everything we were catching in the boats, we started targeting in the kayaks. And at that time, it was really kind of an underground. There weren't a lot of kayaks out there for people to use. There was the Outback, the Hank Parker. There was the Prowler, there was the Tarpon, and those are pretty much the fishing kayaks for kayak anglers. And I went to a seminar by Corey Ruth at a paddle shop that doesn't even exist anymore, and that kind of got the idea sunk in my head. And then we just, like I said, we started checking boxes off the list. The first couple of years, we were pretty much caught everything that you could catch inshore from the kayak. Then a publisher saw the potential. He was like, hey, everywhere I drive, I keep seeing these kayaks on people's trucks. Let's write a book about it. And I was the only person who was writing a kayak fishing at the time, so I kind of lucked into that. And over a year, I wrote a book, about how to kayak fish. Of course, it's completely, I hate to say, but almost, irrelevant today, because all the stuff back then we had to make ourselves. There wasn't a whole lot available. Scotty rod holders, was basically it. And if you wanted to,
Okay.
or drill holes in your kayak and install flush mount rod holders, and crates were milk crates, literal milk crates out of the back of 7-Eleven. And but of course it evolved quickly. And what started in the West Coast with Jim Salmons and those guys out there spread to the East Coast and the Gulf, and it was mostly a coastal sport at first. It didn't seep inshore until years later, actually kind of after it had run its course, because before I was going out, those guys on the California side, were already catching, catching marlin and thresher sharks and, all that stuff. And there was, some pretty big tournaments back then too, but mostly coastal Florida, the Gulf Coast. There was a big tournament in New York, and stuff. And we just kind of rode the wave. When the wave hit Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, where I live, it was a perfect match. So a bunch of people started popping up who ended up becoming, important to the sport. Rob Choi, who's was an Old Town Ocean Kayak, team member, my buddy Kayak Kevin, and your buddy Chad Hoover. We used to fish together here because he was in the Navy. He was stationed in Norfolk. So back at the same time, we were fishing. I was with him when he caught his big cobia. We went out and targeted the big red drum, and we were too stupid to know how to do it safely. He ended up flipping over in the surf. And anyway, he'll have to tell you that story because I don't know where it starts and where it ends. But yeah, so Corey, wrote a book also about kayak fishing. And when it hit this area, of course, it was just like sparks in water. It just exploded. And my book had come out, and things started to change once it kind of inundated the whole coastal scene and it started moving inshore. Then you saw kayak designs start to change. The pedal systems got better and more reliable. Of course, the kayaks got wider. Then the invention of the big step was the lawn chair seat. The frame seat. Opened kayak fishing up to so many more people. And then of course, once it started becoming more targeted towards inshore bass fishing, and stuff like that, and that's of course kind of where it's going now. It's hard to even find, if you can even find. They've discontinued my Ocean Kayak Trident, so it's hard to even find an ocean kayak boat for ocean fishing like we do nowadays. And so that's kind of where the sport's gone. Of course, it's grown, but it's interesting times now too to see where it's going to go from here. But certainly exciting, and there's certainly a lot of boundaries still to cross and things still to discover and places for it to go. But yeah, so it's been a wild ride for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm curious, like, has there been, as you were sharing the story about like the kayak seat, right? You moved from the like the
Mhm.
lawn chair style. What company kind of brought that online first? Do you remember?
Yeah, native, I would say. They came
Okay.
out with this like their hand woven seat, and that was the first one I really remember. People using and being introduced. They came quickly. Innovation came. One would do one thing, and then everybody would jump on board pretty quickly. But that's the first one I think was native came out with the lawn chair seat first, because even the Hobies, the Revolutions, they all had the low style seat because they were coastal boats. Lawn chair
Mm.
seats don't work in for going through the surf and stuff as well as a low profile seat. So that was a big innovation. Then yeah, everybody, of course, Jackson jumped on it, and the rest is history.
Has there been kayak companies that have come and gone that you've seen, or are they all? I mean, it seems like there's been such a high demand that have there been some who've come and gone, or have they all just simply just grown because the demand has been so high?
Well, yeah. Uh, I don't know. I'm not like, an economist. I'm not a businessman. I'm just an editor of a magazine. But, that's been one of the big changes, is that it's become, like private equity firms and, conglomerates and stuff buy these companies, and then they pile them all together, and I think the challenge is, staying in touch with the roots of the, and also, with the design for kayaks and performance, and but yeah, well, the funny thing is, you mentioned kayak, companies that have come and gone. I go to these trade shows, and a lot of times I'll see companies or people introducing kayaks and stuff that never even make it really to the market. So
Huh,
there's been a lot of
really?
those. Yeah, I just didn't get traction or whatever for whatever reason. There's been some crazy stories, but yeah, well, and I think really now is when we're going to start to see shakeups in the industry. I mean, Ocean Kayak, what's left of that, and there could be some other interesting developments now that kayak companies, I think, are really going to have to start fighting harder to get the attention of kayak anglers. The bar is set so high for a fishing kayak now, and what is almost standard. You get a really nice kayak,
Yeah.
nowadays with some of these boats, and so I think the companies that can maintain that high level quality and design and function, are gonna do the best, and companies that can't keep up with that, or maybe not, I don't know. Don't hold me to any of that. Like I said, I'm not Warren Buffett or anything.
No, it's all good. This is just, opinion based. I'm just curious. You have a unique
Yeah, it is
position.
interesting to watch. It is interesting to watch, the ebb and flow and the changes throughout time, certainly, for the sport, and the boats are just kind of a symbol of that.
Right. I mean, everyone likes talking about the boats. I mean, they're fun to chat about. The evolution of them is crazy. I mean, like
Mhm.
you said, you were making things by yourself because there wasn't anything after I
Yeah.
don't know, on the market for it. Like, what were some of the crazy things you were making for your boat? Because all you had was the boat.
Oh, and the funny thing, well, I mean, the way I would set up my ocean kayak was, yeah, just a milk crate in the back, and then, or I like the office crate actually a little bit better, because I think they were like 11 by 16 or something, a little bit bigger, and then some flush mount rod holders. But and I still see I mean, I'm sure you do too, guys, driving down the highway with a boat in the back of their truck with like 40 pounds of PVC pipe, coming out of every angle.
Yeah, that's
There's a lot
me.
of shade.
You're
Yeah, okay.
you're looking at me going down the road. That's my boat, by the way. If
Yeah.
you wondered, I got all the DIY
PVC. That's
rod
awesome.
holders. Yeah.
I mean, everybody has the opportunity to make it what they want. And I think that's one reason why it's been so popular, because you can really make kayak fishing whatever you want. You want to go out on a pond and catch some brim on a bobber. There's a boat for you, and go for it. Or you want to mothership your boat out, or paddle off of Panama and catch a black marlin. Hey, people have done that
Mm.
too. It's a
Oh,
You can really make it what you want. If you want to, all the power to you. And the
yeah.
PVC.
You know what? To each his own. You could buy it by all means. I just like working with
Mm,
tools, working with my hands, and sometimes I feel like I can build a more quality product
yeah,
myself. And if I can do that, I'll do it. And if you want to buy it,
yeah.
go buy it. We're all good. So I got a question here for you. Remember, guys, this is an interactive show. So if you got a question for Rick, please go ahead and throw that. I kind of have one here from Brian Snyder, Real Estate. It's kind of a three-part question, so I'm going to read this out loud for those in the podcast. He asks, can you, one second. He says, my concern is ease of use. He's talking about kayaks, right? Pedaling to be exact. He asks if we can discuss this. I'm 62 and don't want an expensive lawn ornament. And this is all kind of in reference to the stability of pedal drive kayaks. So any thoughts
Mhm.
there, Rick? I know that whenever I was reading through all of your articles, you do a lot of reviews, inflatable
Mhm.
kayaks, and I'm sure you've been in plenty pedal drive kayaks. Any wisdom here for Brian?
Well, like I said, there's a boat for everyone, and my first recommendation, whatever you're buying in any sport, is always, whatever your budget is, exceed it. Get the best you can get to start out with, and that quality of build and construction and functionality and smart design is going to make for a more pleasurable experience. And especially if you're 62, or if you have any health issues or whatever might be limiting your physical abilities to paddle a kayak or whatever you might be. A lot of it's a confidence thing, Darren. A lot of it is people look at it and they're like, oh hell no, I'm not getting in that thing.
Mm,
And then once you get in it, of course, as people find out as well, oh, this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So I can't think of a sit on top kayak out there today that anybody almost of any ability, especially a pedal kayak, couldn't operate, and feel confident in under reasonable conditions. And even when it gets sketchy, Lord, there must be some special God for kayak anglers, because somehow we always manage to make it back to the launch. So of course, pedal kayaks opened up the sport to so many more people again
mm,
by creating confidence. I paddle. I've pedaled, of course, boats I test out and such. Um, I find it just as challenging pedaling with your legs as paddling with your arms. I mean,
mm,
whatever that muscle is in the back of your leg, that thing starts screaming sometimes. But either way, they're
mm-hmm.
very, user friendly and very accessible, and you're not going to like get so tired you can't pedal back to the launch. So, but it's just again building that confidence thing. Pedal system actually adds stability to a kayak too, because the pedal acts like a rudder underneath, or a keel underneath the boat.
Mm,
So it provides that stability as well. And then of course the forward movement of the propeller or the fins or whatever further increase. Anyway, if you fall out of a pedal kayak, take up golf or something. Then it will become a lawn ornament. But I think again, and unfortunately we don't get but if your local paddle shop has a demo day, that's always the best time to go and
mm.
try out a bunch of different boats. Sometimes if you have a paddle shop, they'll even take boats out for a demo, if you want to try one out. But like I can't really think of a pedal kayak that I've been on that would be so unstable. Besides, like like some of the inflatable pedal kayaks, or some of the like stand-up paddleboard hybrid pedal kayak sailboat things or whatever people are putting out sometimes now. But you get a good solid boat, and you'll build that confidence as you use it. And again, um, getting the best boat you can get, because I have certainly been there's a reason why nice things cost a lot of money,
Yeah.
because they're nice. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not that you have to spend, you have to break the bank. Kayak fishing is already incredibly you know budget friendly. I'm just saying that there is definitely a difference between some of the well-known brands that make respected kayaks, and some of the other boats that are out there that might be a little clunkier, especially when you start talking about pedal systems,
Mm-hmm.
because they're all going to break down. That's why I paddle, because I don't want to be off the water ever at all, or have to be like, well, I could go fishing tonight, but I got to go fix my pedal drive.
Mm-hmm.
Again, huge advancements in reliability since the first pedal drives, but any mechanical thing plus water plus dirt plus goofy, clunkety, clumsy guys like me and you, I'm sure too.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are going to be abusing their things. They're going to break. And so the better systems that are sealed, that are, reinforced, that are solid, that are, tested, well used, well reviewed. Um, um, that's going to add a lot more to your enjoyment as well, because it's going to mean you're going to spend more time on the water. It's going to work when you want it to. It's going to pop up when you go into shallow water. It's going to be easy to throw in the back of the truck, and take out of the kayak, and all these little things that, I'll get this system. It'll be all right. I don't care if it, takes me 30 seconds more to put it in the truck every day at the end of the day. Well, that 30 seconds adds up, and it starts to subtract from your enjoyment of it. Then you're like, I don't feel like, putting the whole kayak together and going fishing today. I think I'll just stay home and mow the lawn.
Yeah.
That's the worst nightmare
We don't
ever,
want
right?
that. No,
You can't have that
no.
happening. So, my biggest advice always, again, is, first of all, look where you're going to be fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be shooting down rivers that are like full of rapids and rocks, you don't want a pedal system there. If you're going to be, how you're going to transport the kayak, that's a big thing people don't realize, and store it. You see some guy with a, you know, 17-foot long carbon fiber touring kayak on top of his, Kia, or I mean, on top of his Prius, and you think, oh, okay, I'm going to put my Hobie Pro Angler on top of my Prius, and then you go to try and do it, and you got another thing coming. Are you going to need a trailer? Are you going to, then are you adding more complication into the experience? Is that what you're into it for? Then that's great, but if you're into it for simplicity, then you need to consider that when you're thinking about the boat you're going to buy. Somebody who's older or, less able, again, all the boats are pretty stable. All the sit on top kayaks are pretty stable, especially
Yeah.
the pedal ones. So, that'd be the least of my worries, but again, something you're going to be confident in, something you want to use, so, you're anxious, you're going to use it more. And that's the whole idea, is accessibility. The
Yeah.
kayak offers, I've got a boat, and I do a lot of surf fishing too. But the kayak is just, again, I take it to work with me and go right straight out of work, and throw it in the water. So it's so convenient. It just allows me to fish more often. So that's a big thing you want to consider when you're buying a boat, is what is the boat that you're going to be able to use easiest, the most often, best for the type of fishing that you do, and then get the best one you can afford. Maybe a little bit
Yeah.
better than the ones you can afford.
For sure. Yeah, right. A little bit better than the one. Yeah, for sure. Brian, I took my wife out and my dad out kayak fishing relatively for the first time, and I put him in my Native Slayer Propel 10, and I was in a bona fide P127. So they're both propel drives. Those things have been around. That design on the propel drive has been around for, I think, roughly 10 years or so, and so those are solid. Have always been solid for me. I've owned two of them now for years with no issue whatsoever. They do require some maintenance, but when it comes to ease of use of using one, my dad was worried about stability, right? And the stability issues didn't come into play while you were out on the kayak. He felt very, very comfortable when he was out in the kayak. He literally was, you can kind of pull it back and forth. It's getting in and out of the kayak that a lot of times the stability became an issue. And there's a way to get a proper way and an improper way to get in and out of a kayak. A lot of people get injured right there, is when they're entering and getting in and out, because they don't pull it up correctly, and they wobble and they fall and they get injured. That's kind of how that happens. But nonetheless, what Rick said, 100%. There's so many, like, I get this question a lot, like, what kind of kayak should I buy? And I have like 20 questions I need answered from people before I usually can give them an answer. But solid. Thank you, Rick. Rick, I got a question for you. Switch gears here. You have written, where did I have this written? 334.
I wanted what you were talking about, the bona fide pedal drive.
Yeah.
Did you know that the and I believe I'm right about this, because I've done some pieces on the history of the pedal drives and stuff. That actually came out before the Hobie pedal drive. Native was the first ones to come out. Yeah, the Native, they were the first ones to come out with any kind of, like, let's put pedals into something on a kayak besides paddles. And then Hobie, I mean, it was like right around the same time. And I don't think that there's like took off at first. I think it was like in the development stages. But when I was doing the research for this and interviewing people, the word was that yeah, that came first, and then which surprised me because I thought Hobie was the first ones to think about putting pedals on kayaks, but it was all right there at the about the same time. But just an interesting fact that I don't think most people know. Not that
Oh,
it really matters, but
I love stuff like that. Anytime I can geek, it kind of matters to me. I mean,
it
it kind of
does
feels
matter.
good because I own a Bonafide. I own two pedal drives, and so
Yeah,
it kind of matters. Like, oh yeah, they were
yeah, you
first
can't
first
fall
to
out on a
market.
bona
I know.
fide.
Tip my hat to a company that pioneers for sure.
Well, because they've
Um,
also, they've had this much time to develop a system that's going to be more reliable, and smarter, and they've gone through, as everybody has the same, progression, development, research, development, research, development. But I think they got a pretty solid system now too. So yeah.
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Rick, I want to switch gears on you a little bit. You have written 334 articles on Kayak Angler Mag alone, right? Any of those in particular?
That's from the
You know what?
website.
It's
That
from the
number's from the
website.
website. Oh,
Yeah, it is.
interesting.
Um, is it more or is it less?
Well, I mean, what shows up on the website is stuff that comes out of the magazine, and so the magazine, like I said, it's in 16th year now, and like I said, I think I've been probably there for at least 10. So yeah, no, I've produced an insane amount of well, you can call it what you want, but content, let's just call it content, for certainly for Kayak Angler, and then for all the other places I write for too. It's ridiculous. I get a like Grammarly, it's like this thing that checks your grammar on your
Uh-huh.
website, on your, anyway, they send me emails every once in a while, like, oh wow, you exceeded some like 10 million words this week or something. What are you doing over there?
That's a lot.
But yeah. No, I've definitely written a lot about it, and there's never thank goodness there's never an end to the well.
Yeah, right, right. With something growing so quickly. Any of those particular articles stand out to you as your favorite to research and write?
Well, whoops. Um, Gosh, no. I mean, it's like what is it, like the ancient philosophical saying that like whatever art the artist creates last is his favorite, but then as soon as it's created, it's no longer his favorite. The next one he's working on is his favorite. So
Right.
like right now, I just got an assignment today to write a piece on invasive species for Sport Fishing magazine. And
Mm,
so I'm reaching out to different people that target some of these, and I'm trying to find somebody who catches hook and line targets lionfish, because I'd really like
okay.
to find out, because I know they shoot them. They obviously do a
Right. It's
lot of the
spearfishing.
diving and spear fishing for them, but um, people that actually catch them on hook and line. So I'm trying to find people that do that, and the old regular snakehead. But I also want to look into like our in Virginia here we have catfish. Is it the blue catfish, or anyway, one of the catfish here is also an introduced invasive species. So it's always fun. The hunt is always fun, and meeting people like I just did a piece. I just did a piece for another piece for sport fishing recently about a guy in Texas who runs a 95-foot headboat, and they go out to those oil rigs that are like
Oh
100
yeah.
miles offshore. They go on like 36-hour, 50 some hour headboat trips, right? And they caught this like I think it was 500 or 600 pound blue marlin on the headboat
Whoa.
with like
Whoa.
full of people. It was rough as hell. Everybody was puking. He said,
Oh my gosh.
And anyway, but yeah, they caught this like and he does it like they can keep one a year. So I think almost every year he catches. But anyway, this thing ended up all over social media. So I tracked him down, interviewed him. Fascinating guy. I mean, he's been doing it for like 30 years. His dad was doing it. I mean, just spend all that time. It is a huge 95-foot headboat. It's a big boat. But to
Big
spend all
boat.
that time running that boat, and then all the experiences that he's had, and then of course the story about they broke their fishing rod. It wasn't like they had it on a 130, the biggest offshore fishing rod you can buy. It broke the rod. He had like 40 pounds of drag on it at certain
Jeez.
points, but yeah, just the one you're working on right now is always the best one, and it's so much fun to reach out to these people and all the characters that I get to meet and talk to, and then kind of vicariously live through their adventure. um, um, yeah, so whatever I'm working on now is always my favorite piece.
I love it. One Kush One says, I lost a fish last week. I think it was a carp, and it was the most extreme fight of my life. Hey, I get it. I picked up a carp this last week. I was fishing a nub for bass, and this thing just took off. Actually, was able to land it on 8 pound
That's
test.
actually another one of the invasive species I wanted to try and research because I know a lot of people obviously target them as a sport fish, and so yeah, and I'm just in the early stages of this piece, so I'm still like trying to find, but I'll find somebody, I'll call him up, and he's like going to be carp master. Actually, I did. I'm at the I hope I don't mess it up. The Buffalo King because they have the like buffalo carp that get to be like 50 pounds.
Oh,
And
okay.
his name on Facebook is Buffalo King, so I can't wait to get in touch with this guy and find out
Huh.
about buffalo carp fishing.
That's awesome. Kush said, 10 minutes nonstop fight. He was even hurting his wrist. He saw it about 6 feet out, looked like a carp, and then pulled the lure out of his mouth. That's usually how that works. It
Yeah.
makes you furious. You're like, I just want to land it.
Mm.
Hey, happens to the best of us. One Kush One, for sure. All right. So I was looking through some of your articles, and I'm not sure if you remember. Like, I don't know if you write them, if you retain the information that you write, but there is one recently you wrote. It's I get this question a lot when it comes around fish finders. Actually, I just had
Mhm.
someone reach out to me yesterday and say, "Hey, what fish finder should I get?" And I got a lot of questions, but you wrote an article on the best kayak fish finders for 2023. I'd love to
Yep.
hear what you remember from it and kind of your takeaways from your research on it.
Well, um, yeah, the fish finder technology now is, so out of the roof and so accessible for people because stuff that was like on units that were too expensive for anybody to afford just a few years ago are now available to everybody, and of course they still find ways to make units that are so expensive and nobody can afford. But, now there's so much that like, one of my most valuable you know tools on my kayak is my side scan sonar and my GPS. I use the Humminbird, Mega 7 inch Helix Mega 7 inch or whatever. But that thing, my buddy calls it the TV because he refuses to use a fish finder. But anyway, he calls it TV. What's on the TV? He's always asking. He follows me around. What's on the TV?
It
But
refuses to use the fish finder, huh? Just looks at yours.
yeah. but Yeah, so absolutely. Again, and now of course all these guys using the 360, fish finder, and the best fish finder. Again, it's kind of subjective. Are you looking for a 360 side scan, chirp, 10,000 million megavolt volts or whatever? There's that fish finder for you, and you can fit it on a kayak. And then, or are you just looking for something that's going to tell you how deep the water is, and what the temperature of the water is? And then there's a great fish finder for that. I would have normally, 5 years ago or 3 years ago, I would have said, oh, a colored fish finder is going to be better than a black and white. You can't even find a black and white one anymore.
Mm,
Almost, they're almost all color. You can get a color fish finder for $99,
yeah.
or somewhere close to that. But so yeah, you have to look at what you're going to use it for, how you need it, what kind of space you have on your boat, how you're going to mount it on your kayak. Most modern kayaks now have some sort of transducer, scupper, or
Mount,
connection,
right.
or some mount or pocket or something. So you have to look at your boat and where it's going to go. I definitely, the reason I use the Ocean Kayak Trident is because of the fish finder scupper and little pocket underneath of it, and it's perfect for that helix because they're both owned by the same company, so they kind of work together. But it's perfect for that helix transducer. And like when we search for the big red drum, I just paddle around and look for the schools on either side of me with that side scan, and then once you find them, use the GPS to just keep pounding back on them. But if you're just fishing, simple fishing, you know, brush piles for crappie or something like that, you can probably get away with one of the 3 or 4 inch models. There's even some nice ones I liked, that had, they run on AA batteries.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to say it's an fish finder. I got it. I used it. It actually worked pretty good. If you're concerned about like, you know, then having to rig a battery and then having to run wires and all that stuff, that just takes that out. Just use the 3 AA batteries or whatever it was, 4 AA batteries, and the little transducer goes on a little. The fish finder goes on. Comes with a mount that has a arm for the transducer,
Yeah.
and you're on the water. But then again, all the guys now with the 360 sonars on the other end of the range, now they're making. That's one of the coolest things about the development of the sport as well. And we talk about the development of the products and the boats. People who are now making special mounts for the 360 sonars to go into your gear track on your specific kayak. That's just amazing to me. I love to see that. Some guy starting out in his garage, machining some parts or something. Next thing you know, he's 360 fish finder bracket.com,
Yep. Yep.
and and he's making a business out of it. But so much easier to install them now. So again, if that's what you're looking for, that's available as well. I can't say, like, honestly, the technology, like, I use Garmin side scan, I use the Humminbird side scan, I've used the Lowrance. They all work. They all work great. They all have basically the same features and functions. Most of them are super easy to use now. So it's hard to say, oh, the Helix 360 or the Helix 360 is better than the Garmin 360. It's just, how are you going to use it?
Yeah.
Where are you going to use it? How are you going to rig it into your kayak? And then basically you can't go wrong from there.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Guys, if you have any questions for Rick, we're already at 46 minutes, but you wrote some articles, Rick. Go and throw them in there. We'll circle back on them. We'll give you guys some time to think about it. But you wrote some articles. A lot of your articles are very, there's a review on this, talking about something specific. But I like the ones that were more kind of philosophical almost. And you wrote one called How the Growth of Kayak Fishing Could Have a Negative Impact. What was the thought process behind that, and kind of to unpack that for everyone, why you wrote it and what was your kind of conclusion on that?
Well, it's kind of hard to go through because it's still in process. But you just don't want to see the sport getting too big for its pants.
Mm,
Quality in the boat starting to come down, losing kind of touch with the history in the past. And uh, there may be a little bitterness about the Ocean Kayak Trident, discontinued the kayak that we've been using for years. And and you feel like, you don't want to abandon a certain segment of the sport, just because another segment is exploding. Or these boats, honestly, I think those boats are more expensive and more complicated, so they can make more money off. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a businessman. I don't know what their thoughts were behind all that stuff, but uh, could it get too big in one area and then forget another area? Or could it lose touch with its roots? Um, but and it grows fast too. It can also plateau like other sports have done. Sailboarding. I know they talk about having had a huge like peak and then a plateau. And then
huh,
that affects the sport as well, because if the company's not making all the money that they need to make off of it, then the changes are going to happen there too. So just make sure it doesn't outgrow its base. And again, what it's there for too. It's a convenient way to go fishing. It's
yeah.
accessible for everybody. And make sure that it stays that way.
Is there anything that you've noticed over the past 5 years per se in the kind of the kayak fishing scene, the landscape, that you believe that if it's not course corrected, could have a significant negative effect on the sport?
Oh, I don't really think so. I mean, people
Okay.
talk about like the sport. What, you know. It's weird too, because like, I don't know. I'm not like, I don't know. Do they talk about like golf as like, oh, could there be negative impacts on the sport? I don't know. I'm not a golfer. I maybe, like, I'm a mountain biker. I'm trying to think like other sports. Do they talk about? you know, it's kind of like, first of all, it's not just one thing anymore, for sure. I mean, it's so many different things in so many different directions. I mean, you've got these guys, doing serious full time, that's their job, bass tournament anglers.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That's amazing to me. That development, I think that's awesome. That really gives the sport a respectability, and makes it a real thing. In many ways. But you've also still got the guys who are, I get so many questions about inflatable kayaks, and that's why we always review inflatable kayaks. People just are crazy about them. But the thing is that, like, stand-up paddleboard's the same thing. I remember I first saw a stand-up paddleboard. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that thing is the greatest thing ever." 1 inch of draft. I can go through water that's like a spit.
Right.
And weighs 50 pounds. I can carry it under my arm. And da 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 da. This is going to be the best thing ever. And granted, they're great. I'm not saying anything bad about stand-up paddleboards, but when I got on one, and tried to paddle the thing and then tried to fish off of it, and tried to, it was not exactly what I had predicted. And I'm a surfer and a skater, and I mean, not that I couldn't, stand up on it. It's just that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? And so you want to make sure that people don't get into the sport, and then end up disappointed because they got into it the wrong way, or they got into the wrong
Mm,
area of it, or we've all probably been part of the process of, as you get the boat, the entry level boat, that they talk about, and but that entry level boat could just disappoint people a lot of times too, and even turn them off of the sport. Oh, I tried it, and it ends up in a lawn ornament, like the fellow was saying. My
yeah.
neighbor, I gave him a kayak, and I think he used it twice. It fell out of his truck once, and it's been sitting in his backyard. I go out there and see it every day. But yeah, so I don't really think there's, no, it's a great sport, and there's great people in it, and on the power of that, I think it's strong, and there's so many more places for it to grow, and kayaks are becoming more accessible to people. Hopefully now we're over this whole, supply chain shortage stuff, so
Right.
people who want to try it can try it, and get out there and do it. I mean, look at all the organizations that take veterans and disabled people, and old people and young people. If there's a people, there's somebody out there taking them fishing in a kayak.
Right.
It's
Right.
just more accessible than any other kind of fishing, and almost any kind of outdoor activity. If I want to go hunting, I got to find a piece of land, and I got to hike in there and climb up a tree or something. You know what I mean? You want to go kayak fishing, there's nothing stopping you, and that's been proven over and over again. And it gives people such a level of confidence. They really feel like they've accomplished something. It's just good all around. So yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. I hope not, but I think it's looking good.
That's good. I like it. Here, I'm reading some of the comments over here. Oh yeah, I went out with Fishy, Cincy Fish Dude today. Put me on some fish, my man. Thank you, Paul. Had a good time. All right, here's back to you, Rick. You wrote an article on. It was titled "This Is Kayak Fishing at Risk of Class Warfare." Well, I'm curious what they. I mean, that a lot of people are going to read that and be like,
Okay.
What are you talking about?" So unpack that for everybody. I read it, thought it was interesting. Just your thoughts on it. Maybe it's changed since you've written it. Who knows? But I'm curious.
Yeah, I like our headlines are real attention grabbing. It's probably not as extreme as it sounds, but well, as we talk about all the different types of kayak fishing, and uh, you know, there certainly is, like, oh, motor guys, pedal guys talk smack about motor guys, and paddle guys talk smack about pedal guys, and sup guys talk smack about everybody. I don't know, that kind of thing. I mean, I think it's kind of tongue in cheek, kidding around a little bit, but on the other hand too, when you start saying, like, oh, and I mean, you hear it all the time, certainly on social media and other places too, like, oh, that fish doesn't count because you caught it in a motorized kayak, or uh, uh, didn't do this or didn't do that, or you didn't release it or whatever, um, in a silly sort of way, but also kind of in a serious way as well. It is one sport, and people think it's just funny and it's fun and games, but these are the kinds of things that other organizations who have, who are against fishing, and there are people out there and organizations and powers out there that, I believe it or not, are against fishing and
Huh.
recreational fishing, and that's the kind of stuff that they can use to separate and divide people, and you know keep us from having our fair share of the pie. Everybody's trying to get a piece of, whatever it is, fishing license money, access, fisheries management and regulations. Everybody's fighting for something. We could even look at the access issue. Go to your local boat ramp on a Saturday, and if you don't see a kayaker and a motorboater fighting, you didn't stay long enough.
Right, right,
You know what I
right.
mean? And it's getting the same way. I mean, I can't tell you, like, every week, every time I go into the tackle shop, some boater stops me and is like, "You got to tell all these kayak fishermen to stay out of my way." I got to tell you a story. I was anchored up and casting at the dock, and this guy in a kayak comes right past me and between me and the dock. And I mean, it's like, okay, I'll put that on our website. Hey, dude in
Yeah,
Ruby Inlet, who was that?
yeah.
On
Oh
our
my
social
gosh.
media, right? But it's that kind of stuff, and you see it in, well, like, in the surf fishing here in North Carolina. For years, we could have access to the beach. Drive on the beach anytime we wanted to, drive almost everywhere we wanted to, and then conservation groups got in and they frowned upon that, and they used a poor little bird, and they changed the whole fishery. They changed the whole access to the beach, and when you can access it, and it's just been a big mess ever since then. And that's the kind
Yeah,
of thing that, if we don't all come together as kayak fishermen, and okay, whatever, you're in a kayak, you're in a paddle, you're in a pedal, you're in a boat, or whatever, we all got to come together to work towards protecting our access to the sport and to the water, and things that we like to do.
yeah. I was out today with Paul from Cincy Fishing Dudes, and we're just talking about kind of the laws and the access to. He likes fishing a lot of the streams and rivers around Cincinnati, and sometimes it's hard to find a place to park. It's hard to find a place to, unless you want to walk across private land to get to the rivers. And I guess
Yeah.
here in Ohio, he was telling me that I know it's different for every state, but um, like it's not if you're floating on like a float tube, you're fine. If you're
Hmm.
walking through it, it's technically against the law here in Ohio because you're on someone's private property. And I know
Hmm.
it gets really funky in all kinds of states. So if you're listening from other places and you're like, hey, that's not where it is here, I know it changes from spot to
Yeah.
spot. But I bring this up because you wrote an article that was titled "We're Losing Fishing Access Faster Than Gaining." Um, and you were sharing your story about how you used to go to this tarpon hole, and share that a little bit and tell me, is it getting worse or is it getting better since you've written that? I'm not sure when you wrote that. It seemed recent.
Man, you're really pushing all my buttons tonight. But yeah, that is certainly a sore spot, and a serious issue. And it's kind of funny how it plays out too. Um, you know, okay, so, well, the story with the tarpon hole, there was this road that ended in the middle of a salt marsh, and it was the only access spot where we could paddle our kayaks to a legitimate tarpon hole, here in
Mm,
Virginia. And it wasn't easy, but it was really, literally, I mean, after years of looking for places to paddle and access to find access, this was the best option, on the whole eastern shore of Virginia. And
wow.
yeah, we parked there all the time. It was kind of like I don't, it was kind of like a free use. The commercial fishermen had their boats there, just like little skiffs and stuff. You would see, like, high school kids have been having parties and beer cans there. And, it's just, people would pull up and stargaze, whatever. It just seemed like a place where people could access the water there that was kind of on the down low. But, anyway, public access, but not owned by the public, kind of thing. Real,
Okay.
obviously, no developed ramp or anything. It was just, crushed clamshells going down into the water. But anyway,
The local hole,
um,
right?
yeah, yeah. And all fine and dandy. And then last summer we come back from tarpon fishing, and there's a note on my windshield, and it's the lake sheriff, telling me that he don't want to have to tow my car, so he's writing me a note, to give me a call. And my buddy called, and he said that, yeah, the landowner just decided all of a sudden you don't want people parking there anymore, and that's the end of it. So that's one issue, obviously. And I don't know if it was because of the beer cans and the fish carcasses, or whatever, or if he just decided, whatever reason, who knows why he decided, and that's the end of it. And so,
Right.
uh, obviously that's one aspect of it. But the thing I see, and this is, I think, an issue, and I see it over and over again. Okay, so I live in Virginia Beach, nice place, suburban, town, blah blah blah, and you see this over and over. Like they're adding kayak access to whatever, right? They want to put in a kayak launch on, such and such a creek, Elizabeth River, whatever, right? Great,
Right.
that's wonderful. Obviously, more access is better, and great use of tax dollars, in my opinion. But then, there I go down to the launch, the place where I've been like dragging my kayak through the mud up to my knees for years. Now they put a nice kayak dock there, and a launch and the whole, where you can pull the kayak up,
Oh yeah.
handicap access and everything. Right, nice floating dock, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
But I go to launch my kayak, and like the way that they put the pilings, I can't, I can't get it into the water. So I end up like in the weeds beside the thing, launching my kayak because it's easier than actually using the kayak launch that they spent how many thousands of dollars on,
Oh my
and it's
gosh.
because nobody did the due diligence of actually asking a kayak person, how to launch. They called up the company. They're like, we need a kayak dock. They're like, yep, we'll have it delivered. And they put it in
Uh-huh.
there. Nice, it's beautiful. But almost unusable unless you have a second person with you. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
okay. Yeah.
And certainly no, handicap person. And anyway, this dock is also like at the end of like just what I'm thinking of, at the end of like a 500-yard trail or something. You have to drag, you have to
Oh,
cart your kayak down. So I'm thinking like somebody who's disabled, how are they even going to
like
get
they're
their
not.
kayak? Anyway, I mean, no, no, no. I'm sure they can, figure it out or whatever. People have amazing ability to get things done that they want to get done. But my point is that the thing is almost unusable because nobody actually. And I called him up, and I did a piece about this too at one point. I called the guy up who was like the city planner guy, and he was like, "Yeah, no, we never talked to anybody who actually kayaks when we put that thing in." And the bad thing is that we used to have a local kayak shop here that was, real grassroots, locally owned, um, kayak kayaker owned. People
Okay.
who the anyway, deep kayak roots and guides. They had a guiding whole guide thing, where they had people could go out, mostly. And they were around way before kayak fishing too, but so a lot of canoes and a lot of the touring. Anyway, they fully knowledgeable. They created paddle trails. When you have an organization, when you have a shop like that, that their impact on the local paddling scene. That's where I learned to kayak fish. That's where I saw the first seminar, that I went
Mm,
to about kayak fishing. That creates a community, but it also, they're the main advocates for the people, the community of kayakers. Well, that shop closed, and now we got some, anyway, not really a whole lot, but there's not, that power is gone, that influence is gone, that like uh, home base for paddlers and kayakers is gone. And they were the people who would have been down at City Hall, because the rest of us have day jobs. They would have been down there, they would have known, they would have gotten a hold of that guy. They would have been like, let's look at it. You know what I'm saying?
right.
But they're not there
Right.
anymore. And
Yeah.
so now they just, and of course, everybody's local community, like my parents, they're fighting in their civic association right now because they want to put a kayak dock in their little neighborhood pond. It makes it, everybody wants a kayak dock on their pond because it makes real estate values higher, and a nicer place to live, better quality of life.
Huh.
They score higher on the USA Today, it's the best cities to live in or whatever. You know what I mean? It's all good, it's all good, but come on,
Yeah.
let's do it right, so that people can actually use it. And the only way you're going to get that is, again, with a strong community of kayakers, uh, ideally with some sort of club or somebody that's, some organization, that a shop or something, that can spearhead these things and kind of become the go-to's, for these issues. So yeah, I think that's where I was kind of going with that. Like I said, you're pushing all my buttons.
Hey, you know what? I spent some time. I was like, all right, let me see where Rick's buttons are today. No, it's good. Thank you for answering those. We are coming to the end of our time. We're not done yet, though. So if you have a question for Rick, I have another question for him, and then we'll finish on any listener questions. But Rick, two-part question for you. What trends are you seeing right now in kayak angling? And give me your crystal ball. Break that bad boy out. What will kayak fishing look like in 5 years? So, kind of what you've been able to see, the questions people are asking you, conversations you've had. what does the next 5 years look like? Just, I mean, this is just a fun question, right?
Mhm.
Just what do you got for us?
Yeah, I think that accessibility is always the biggest trend. Whether you're making and designing and selling kayaks, or whether you're making and designing and selling fishing rods, or whatever. Anybody who's in this industry, or whether you're the editor of a kayak fishing magazine, our main goal is to get more and more people involved in the sport. I mean, it's good for us, of course, but it's good for the sport, and it's good for, there's no bad parts of it. So, I think things becoming more accessible, boats becoming easier to use. It'd be great if somebody could invent some, carbon fiber Hobie Angler Pro, a 12-foot sturdy, stable kayak that weighed less than 50 pounds. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Hmm.
Or a foolproof pedal system, or even the advances that have come in motors. Like I said, I get to go to these trade shows, and so I kind of see things before they hit the market, and see the progression of things. And perfect example is the trolling motor on the kayak, right? It wasn't
Hmm.
that long ago that literally, you had to find a trolling motor, figure out some, usually using 2x4s. I'm sorry if I'm describing your kayak again, but
Not this
two by
time.
fours, 2x4s, and whatever, PVC again, right, or whatever, the building blocks of kayak fishing. But figure out some way to jimmy it onto your kayak, and rig up the car battery or whatever you had going on. And now you go to some of these trade shows, and some of the major kayak motor or trolling motor companies are coming out with purpose built kayak fishing trolling motors with the mounting kit there, ready to go, short shaft, battery, the whole 9 yards. And that just makes it easier for everybody to get into kayak fishing.
Yeah.
The guys who aren't so handy with PVC and 2x4s, now they can easily get into it. And the kayaks, of course, are all designed with the mounting bases on them, and the through screws and everything else. So it's just becoming easier for people to participate in the sport, and opening it up to more people, more places. So that's the biggest trend that I see. Um, and I hope it continues to become even more economically available to people too. We don't want to forget that. You can start getting $1,000, $1,500, pedal kayaks maybe, that are good quality pedal kayaks, as
Yeah.
this technology trickles down. And then more people can get into it too. Because I see that too a lot of times. Like you talk to people and they're like, oh, I only have a paddle kayak. I wish I could have a pedal kayak, but I'm just not that cool, or whatever. And it's like, you know, we need to, first of all, address those people and be like, build them up for being a paddler too, but make it more accessible to more people. Because again, the pedals and the motors, it just opens the sport up to more people, and more possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. Um, if you answered it, let me know. But 5 years, do you foresee the sport plateauing for any reason? And if it were to do that, what would, in your opinion, would make it happen? Or do you see this up and to the right for a long time?
Well, again, I'm not a business person, and these guys who run these kayak companies, especially the big companies, they could give you an answer to that. They probably wouldn't, because it's all super duper double secret. But they've all got opinions on that kind of stuff. But I don't see it, as far as like demand and interest plateauing, because now that it's again more accessible, and that's the key to continuing the growth. And also, we were talking about like comparing it to sailboarding. Well, sailboarding, there's only kind of like when you go out in the sailboard with the wind, and you go real fast in one direction, and then you turn around and come back real fast in another direction. I'm trying to, like, how am I developing this idea here? But a kayak, I mean, there's a million things you can do with it. There's a million places you can go. There's a million ways you can use it. There's, just it seems like endless possibilities, and more and more arising every time a new person gets into a kayak. They're finding a new way to use it. So I think that's going to continue the growth, and that's a good omen for the sport and the industry as well. Um, you know, and it's interesting too. what little bit I know about the business as well. But it seems interesting that, like, I remember when we had like a big recession, you know, the guy who was like the CEO of Pure Fishing, Berkeley and all those guys, right? He was like, he went to this. We were at a conference. He made this speech, and he said something basically like, if you're not making, there was a downturn in the industry. Like, people
Mm,
weren't had. He was like, if you're not selling fishing tackle, then you're doing it wrong. Because, and I remember, going into like tackle shop, and people walking out with combo, rod and reel combos, and Plano tackle boxes, and bobbers, and worm rigs, and box. People were getting into fishing because it was easy to just grab a couple rods. It would cost you the same to grab a couple rods and all that tackle as going out to the movies 2 or 3 times with your family. You know what I'm
right.
saying? And so they kind of
Right.
saw it as like a great opportunity for simple, entertainment and recreation, and really accessible and not too expensive, at that level.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to continue to keep the sport growing too. So even if there's downturns or slowdowns or what have you, people may even come even more to the kayak because they're like, oh, it's not such a giant investment, and I can still get on the water, and maybe I'll get a boat later or whatever, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really exciting because unlike other sports, and like I got into I'm into mountain biking, and mountain biking, that's what it's done. It's like fragmentized mountain biking. When I was first started mountain biking, it was like basically one mountain bike, one type of mountain bike for driving through single track. Now it's like, oh my gosh, you got cross country mountain bikes, you got downhill mountain bikes, you got extreme, you got hybrid, and it's the same with kayaks. You've got ocean kayaks, you got lake kayaks, you got hybrid kayaks, you got stand up paddle boards, and yeah, it just seems unlimited. I think what you do see though is this the sport narrowing, like the strong surviving, and some of the weaker elements of it maybe are going to drop off, and you're going to end up with, like, I don't know, like the car industry, Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, whatever. You're going to end up with like
Okay.
three or four main companies, making good quality kayaks at different price levels. And but again, I don't quote me on any of that because I
No, it's
don't
fun. This is fun to
know.
speculate. Who knows?
It's fun to
I mean,
speculate, and that's all it is. That's all it is. Yeah, but I don't see any like, yeah, kayaks like losing value and going, going the way of the dodo bird.
well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's fun talking to individuals who have such a unique perspective, written so much about the sport for a long time. So thank you so much, guys. If you have not yet done so, if you're like into kayak fishing, head over to Kayak Fishing Magazine. I read your stuff all the time. It's a ton of fun. A lot of great insights, a lot of different topics. And next time you see one written by Rick, you'll be like, hey, I know that guy. So, Rick, thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time, guys. We got Creek Crawler on the show next Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. So, look forward to seeing you then. I'll be back in my office, back in the Caribbean of the Midwest, Canton, Ohio. So, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Rick.